The sun hung low over the barren horizon, setting the vast expanse of the frontier ablaze with a fiery orange that seemed to swallow the remnants of daylight whole. The pistolero moved alone, his silhouette a weathered specter against the dusty trail that stretched endlessly before him. Every step stirred the choking dust, every breath carried the dry heat of the unforgiving land. His eyes, sharp and guarded, held the weight of countless battles fought in silence. A man defined by an unyielding code of justice and a fortress of solitude, built from scars both seen and unseen. In the heart of this withering expanse stood a town clinging desperately to life. Whispers of rattling doors and creaking wood filled the hollow streets of the decaying settlement. Saloon signs hung crooked, windows blank and watching like empty eye sockets. It was here the pistolero had been drawn, the trail leading him to a grim task, tracking a young Apache woman whose disappearance had sown unease among the wary townsfolk. The air carried a sourness as he approached a hidden refuge beyond the town's edge, a forsaken shack cloaked in shadow and filth. Inside, the chilling clink of cold metal echoed, chains rattling against aged timber. There, huddled and trembling, was the young Apache, her eyes wide pools of fear and betrayal, framed by dirt-streaked skin that spoke silently of hardship beyond her 18 years. She carried the heavy burden of abandonment, an innocence shattered beneath the weight of desolation. The pistolero's hardened gaze softened for a fraction, yet the steel in his stance remained firm. His solitude was not mere habit, but armor fashioned by anguish and loss. Encounters such as these stirred the tempest within him, a clash between detached duty and an ember of compassion threatening to ignite. His mind grasped the bitter truth, creeping like poison. The girl was sold, betrayed by none other than her own mother. A cruel barter of blood for survival. A haunting fracture of trust and kinship. The revelation pressed on his conscience like the searing sun above, the harsh reality of betrayal driving his resolve deeper into the unforgiving desert heart. This knowledge was his burden now, the engine propelling the somber journey ahead. Stepping closer, the pistolero knelt beside the shack's grim occupant. The girl flinched at the touch, suspicion and fragile hope warring in her gaze. Words were scarce. Silence spoke volumes. The coarse clatter of chains dragged against the wooden floor as he eased them, his fingers deft, careful not to break the tentative thread weaving between them. The faintest flicker of trust flickered in her eyes, fragile and fleeting, against the backdrop of dread. Outside, the wind carried distant hoofbeats and murmurs, voices threaded with menace, signaling the approach of those who dealt in human misery. Time contracted. Every second weighed heavy with peril. The pistolero's instincts sharpened, a plan forged silently behind cold eyes as the noose of danger tightened palpably around them. The moment tightened, hanging suspended like a drawn bowstring, poised to release. The wilderness held its breath. The land awaited the storm. Muitos companheiros de jornada já enfrentaram o deserto da solidão. Verifique sua inscrição agora e junte-se à nossa saga. The pistolero's grip tightened around the young Apache's arm as they fled into the tangled brush beyond the decrepit shack. The echo of hooves thundered behind them, a relentless reminder that their pursuers would not relent. Dust rose in choking clouds, each step a desperate gamble against the parched earth and the hungry eyes stalking them from the shadows. She stumbled, weak but stubborn. Her gaze, sharp and wary, flickered between him and the path ahead. The chains had left bruises on her wrists, a cruel mosaic of her mother's betrayal etched in flesh. She clung to silence. Each breath, a small war between distrust and the fading hope this lone man stirred within her. The pistolero's face remained unreadable, a granite mask carved by years of solitude. Yet beneath the surface, the flutter of empathy grew bolder. He knew the sting of fractured trust, though he hid it well. Every step they took together wove a fragile thread between them, a thread he vowed not to sever. The terrain was unforgiving. Jagged rocks tore at their boots, thorned branches snatched at their clothes, and the sun pressed down like a merciless overseer. Time blurred into a mosaic of heartbeats and whispered urgencies. Behind them, the ragged call of a pursuer cut through the dry air, quick and cruel. The pistolero glanced sideways, breath steady despite the pounding chase. "We keep moving, no stopping." Her voice was a ghost, hoarse and hesitant. "Why? Help me. Could leave me to them." He said nothing at first, the silence thick as grit in his throat. His code was simple, yet ironclad. Justice for those who had none. She was no mere charge. She was a symbol of something crueler than the land itself. A daughter sold by blood, abandoned to fate. That ignited a fire in him, a purity and purpose few understood. As the sun dipped lower, they found brief refuge beneath a jagged outcropping, shadows pooling like dark ink. The pistolero lowered her gently to the ground. The urgency softened just long enough for exhaustion to claw at their limbs. She pulled her shawl tighter, eyes narrowed against a creeping chill. "What now?" Her question broke through the quiet, laced with bitterness. He met her gaze, the first flicker of something softer shining through the storm of stoicism. "We stay alive. Find a way out before they catch us. You trust me?" "I don't," she interrupted, voice sharp as a blade. "Not yet." That honesty was unexpected, yet welcomed. Trust could not be forced, only earned. He nodded once, solemn and steady. "Then I keep you safe anyway. That's a promise." Night fell swiftly, swallowing the horizon beneath a vault of stars. The distant howls of coyotes stirred memories neither dared speak aloud. Around the crackling fire he managed to spark. She stayed silent, eyes burning bright with anguish and defiance. He watched her, not as a possession, but as a soul weathered by betrayal, and yet unbroken. The pistolero removed a small flask from his coat pocket, tilting it toward her despite her reluctance. After a long pause, she accepted, the gesture tiny but telling, an unspoken truce forged in necessity. Morning came with brittle light and stiff muscles. Their path led into a scrubland of sparse brush, the earth cracked and lifeless. As they moved cautiously, the young Apache's gaze caught something unsettling, a series of footprints cutting fresh and deliberate through the dust. She pointed, voice low and urgent. They follow, close. His eyes narrowed, reading the signs with the cold precision of a seasoned hunter. "We're not alone," he confirmed, hand resting lightly on the grip of his revolver. "Better be ready." Her jaw clenched, anger simmering beneath the surface. "Mother sent them. The woman who sold me." His heart clenched, a vicious knot twisting tighter. The weight of this journey was no longer just survival. It was a reckoning. The betrayal was etched deep, yet so was a burning resolve to rewrite what fate had tried to seal. They moved faster now, careful but relentless, each step measured, yet desperate to stay ahead. The oppressive heat thickened with every passing hour, shadows growing longer, and threats more imminent. The pistolero's mind churned, calculating possibilities, risks, every potential trap laid out like a gauntlet on the path ahead. They came upon a ridge overlooking a dry creek bed, its cracked floor an eerie testament to the ruthless drought that gripped the land. The pistolero scanned for water, knowing the young woman's strength would only falter if thirst claimed her. His own throat was parched. The endless chase was eroding their endurance. The Apache girl knelt beside the cracked earth, tracing dry indentations with trembling fingers. No water. None comes for miles. Hope flickered, fragile and distant. The pistolero's gaze met hers, a silent vow passing between them to endure, to press on despite the harshness. They were alone, yet bound by shared scars and the harsh truth of the frontier. Trust was a currency as rare and precious as water. They rested briefly, weapons close and senses keen, as the pistolero lit a meager fire beneath a scraggly mesquite. The girl's eyes caught movement, a flicker at the edge of the settlement beyond the ridge. "Tracks," she whispered. "Heavy boots, not far." He moved to her side, the cold dawn light catching the hard lines in his face. "They're closing in. We can't afford mistakes." Her hands clenched into fists, face contracted in fierce determination. "They want me back, for their own gain. That trap they set. Mother's part of a reckoning we have no say in." Her gaze softened just enough for him to see the raw pain beneath the armor. Betrayal wasn't just a wound. It was a chain they were breaking together. The pistolero hefted his rifle, the heavy weight grounding him in an uncertain world. "We'll stay one step ahead, but this path only grows darker." She swallowed, hard, then nodded, the fragile alliance between them solidifying under the unyielding sun. From the distance, the sound of hoofbeats rose again, closer now, deliberate and threatening. He tightened his grip on the rifle. "They've found us." The girl's breath hitched, eyes wide, but resolute. "Then we fight, or die trying." The horizon swallowed the sun as the shadows lengthened. The chase was far from over, and somewhere beyond the dry ridge, enemies closed in on the fugitives' trail. The dry wind shifted through the cracked earth, carrying with it the faint clatter of heavy boots pressing relentlessly against the brittle soil. The pistolero's sharp eyes caught the silhouette of figures advancing beyond the ridge, cazadores de recompensas, and a cold-faced mercantile trader, greed as palpable as that, grit that coated their boots. He crouched low beside the young Apache girl, her dark eyes fixed on the approaching threat, with a mixture of anger and tired resignation. The sun's rays bled crimson across the horizon, as if nature itself bore witness to the cruel hunt that had engulfed them. The pistolero's hand tightened around the worn wooden stock of his rifle, each muscle counting the weight of the coming choice. "We can't outrun them," he muttered, voice as dry as the land. "But we don't have to face 'em head-on. Not yet." She looked up, lips pressed thin, her gaze burning through the dimming light. "Why hide? They're after me, because I'm to be sold back like cattle." He shifted, face lined with shadows, considering the cost of silence and the risk of confrontation. The trade was more than blood money. It was a claim, a dark contract signed in desperation and cruelty. The pistolero was no stranger to such debts. "I know a man," he said quietly. "Old friend, been long since he hunted Apaches the hard way. But he changed his path." Her brows furrowed, confusion flickering beneath layers of distrust. "Changed? How?" "A farmer now," the pistolero replied, voice steady. "Might have answers, and a stake in stopping this madness." With a slow nod, the girl allowed a glimmer of hope to crack the armor around her heart. Trust remained a distant shoreline, but the current between them was shifting. They moved silently down the ridge, shadows swallowed by the encroaching night. The pistolero's boots barely disturbed the dust as he led her through tangled mesquite scrub, the distant hoofbeats pounding the rhythm of impending violence. The farmstead emerged from the gloom like a solitary beacon against the vast wilderness. A low wooden fence encircled a modest homestead, smoke curling from the chimney and mingling with the cool air. At the porch, an aged man leaned on a gnarled cane, his lined face etched with stories of brutal life and reluctant redemption. "Jacob?" the pistolero called softly, recognition sparking in the man's weary eyes. "Been a long trail since we last crossed paths," Jacob rasped, voice rough but steady. His gaze drifted to the girl, a flicker of understanding igniting beneath his grizzled brow. "She's hunted," the pistolero explained. "Sold, betrayed by blood." Jacob's hands clenched involuntarily, knuckles whitening. "That's a sorrow the land's been soaked in too long. I'm done with that life," he declared. "But you're walking into a nest of vipers. Those mercenaries won't let this go." The pistolero met his old friend's stare. "We don't want a showdown. Not without advantage. But we're outnumbered, and the girl is more than prey. She's a symbol. If they get her, they make their cruelty permanent." Jacob nodded slowly. "Then you need more than grit and guns. You'll need to understand the land they're crossing." The young Apache girl, listening intently, let the silence stretch between them like an unspoken pact. Her voice, when it came, was nearly a whisper. "My mother, she didn't sell me for hate. Hunger and fear pushed her. Debts she could not pay, threats over every coin." The pistolero's jaw tightened. Desperation breeds betrayal, but it can't justify the cost on your soul. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, the story finally spilling free like a dam breaking. "She drank the fear, and I drank the shame. But I'm not her prisoner anymore. This path, it's mine. I want freedom, not chains." Jacob eased his hand onto her shoulder, firm but gentle. "Then you'll find no chains here." Outside, The cool snap of twigs betrayed an approach, the mercenaries closing ranks as shadows crept closer. The pistolero's gaze sharpened, keen as a hawk circling its prey. "They've got wind," he said, voice low and urgent. "They're setting a trap. We might not have time to run much further." The girl's breath hitched, but she steadied herself, resolve hardening like steel forged in fire. "I'm not running anymore." Jacob shifted, pulling a worn rifle from the house, eyes scanning the dark borderlands. "If we face them, it'll be on our terms. I know these lands, and the tricks the snake traders play." The pistolero's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then we make sure they regret hunting us." The night deepened. Stars blinked cold witness to the fragile alliance, forged in desperation and hope. Between flickering firelight and whispered plans, the past's wounds began to weave into the fabric of something fierce and unyielding. But beyond the fence line, figures moved, silent, swift, closing like wolves eager to rend. The pistolero looked once more at the girl, her face set like a warrior's mask, eyes burning with newfound fire. He nodded grimly. "They think this will end soon. They're wrong." Hoofbeats thundered louder. The trap was closing. And as the shadows spilled across the land, mercenaries with merciless intent readied their ambush, eyes gleaming with cold profit. The night was poised on a blade's edge, waiting for the first spark of violence to ignite the deadly storm. The crackle of gunfire shattered the still twilight as the ambush erupted into a violent storm. Bullets tore through the dry air, kicking up clouds of choking dust around the pistolero and the girl. His revolver barked with ruthless precision, each shot a desperate effort to keep the vicious hunters at bay. The young Apache crouched low behind jagged rocks, clutching her side where a searing pain blossomed, blood seeping through the thin fabric of her blouse. Pain mingled with fear, but her gaze never wavered from the chaos. She saw the pistolero move instinctively, every muscle taut, every breath measured, as he shielded her with his body. Around them, mercenaries snarled curses and shouted orders, a pack of vultures, hungry for the prey they had been promised. A sharp crack echoed, and the pistolero's leg buckled, a bullet grazing bone and flesh. Staggering, but refusing to fall, he dragged the girl toward a shadowed crevice, a narrow shelter carved between towering rocks, jagged and unforgiving. The rocks seemed to swallow their breath and pain alike as they collapsed into the cold embrace of concealment, their bodies pressed close, the pistolero grimacing as he tore a strip from his shirt to bind the girl's wound. Her breath hitched against him, half from pain, half from disbelief that someone so distant and hardened had bent to care so tenderly. The silence between them was heavy, broken only by the labored rasp of their breaths and the faint echoes of gunfire fading into the distance. Hours bled slowly into night. Bandages secured and wounds staunched, the pistolero leaned back against the rough stone, wincing with each movement. The girl's dark eyes traced his face, studying the lines carved by relentless years on the trail. "Why did you save me?" she asked, voice brittle but tinged with curiosity. The question cut deeper than any bullet. He looked away, his jaw clenched, voice rough as sand. Because no one else would. Because blood shouldn't define what's owed, not when it costs a soul. She swallowed, shifting slightly to ease the ache in her ribs. My mother, she sold me. For money, for fear. I thought the world was cruel, until you found me. The pistolero's gaze softened, just a flicker, but it was enough to seep through the armor she had built. Betrayal cuts deep. Learned that long ago. It doesn't mean you have to carry the same weight. Her fingers clenched a patch of dirt, knuckles white. Freedom feels like a lie. He met her gaze steady and quietly firm. Freedom's a fight, not a gift. The night curled around them, thick with unspoken truths. Their shared wounds formed a fragile bond. Two fractured souls, adrift in a wilderness that seemed determined to swallow them whole. Suddenly, a rustle from beyond the rocks shattered the fragile peace. The silhouette of a mounted messenger materialized into the dim starlight, his face grim beneath a wide-brimmed hat. He approached cautiously, boots stirring dry gravel. The pistolero's hand twitched toward his revolver, eyes narrowing. Who rides out here at this hour? The messenger hesitated, then drew a crumpled, blood-stained note from beneath his coat. From your mother, he said flatly, voice like the scraping wind. She sent me with a warning. The pistolero's eyes flicked to the girl, whose breath hitched, a storm of shock and dread pulsing behind. Her dark gaze, unfolding the note with trembling hands, she read aloud. If you don't return, there will be consequences for both of you. She'll stop at nothing to have me back. The words hung heavy, a poisonous weight settling in the cramped enclosure. The pistolero crushed his jaw. Your mother's desperation has twisted into menace. She was never just desperate, the girl whispered fiercely. She's part of the darkness that haunts this land, but I won't be her prisoner. The messenger shifted, glancing anxiously toward the horizon, where distant hoofbeats thudded, a reminder that danger was circling close. The pistolero stood abruptly, grim resolve hardening his features. We won't wait for her to come. We'll face her before she reaches us. The girl nodded, pain and defiance warring in her eyes. I'm done hiding. Outside, the wind swirled through the rocky crevice, carrying the faint howl of threats yet to come. The fragile trust forged among wounds and words was now tempered by the chilling promise of a reckoning. A brutal face-off between a mother's greed and a daughter's fierce will to be free. As the first light of dawn stained the horizon, the pistolero scanned the barren land beyond their shelter. Every sense sharpened. The path ahead was littered with shadows, of men, of choices, of past sins seeking to claw back what was lost. And as the sun rose, a silhouette appeared against the fiery sky. An old figure known to both man and girl, waiting on the edge of fate's cruel stage. The pistolero's boots crunched lightly against the coarse, rocky ground as he guided the young Apache girl toward the encampment where her mother was said to be living among the merchants. His mind wrestled with the harsh truth of the betrayal, not just a transaction of flesh and coin, but a desperate act woven tightly into a brutal landscape of debts and threats. The girl's gaze, sharp and wary, never left the horizon, as if she expected shadows to rise up from the very dust at any moment. They arrived under the sweltering noon sun, a grim compound of weathered tents and crude wooden outbuildings, surrounded by makeshift corrals. Rough voices echoed, punctuated with coarse laughter and the clink of chains. The pistolero could feel the heavy weight of eyes watching their approach, hostile, calculating. He signaled the girl to stay back as he stepped forward alone. The woman who had once been her mother was there, thin and drawn, eyes hollow, but fierce with desperation. Around her, merchants and traders exchanged harsh words. Piles of ledgers and coins spread on a battered table. The pistolero's voice cut through the din. "We need to talk." Her mother turned, surprise flickering instantly to guarded hostility. "You bring my daughter here to bargain? You don't know what you're dealing with." "No," the pistolero replied, steady and unyielding. "I know a debt's been paid with a soul's price. This ends." She spat bitterly. "This land's a trap. We're chained by debts no man can unbind. I had no choice but to sell whom I could, to survive." The girl's eyes burned with an intensity forged of pain and defiance, watching the woman who had betrayed her. "You sold me," she said, voice cold, "like I was nothing." The mother's lips trembled, and the merciless truth unfolded between them like dry tinder. Hunger gnawed like a predator, debts inked in blood that shadowed every step, threats looming larger than mercy. The pistolero's gaze hardened. "Your pain doesn't justify sacrifice of your own flesh." "They'll come for her," the mother said, sharply, glancing over her shoulder. "The merchants, the hunters, they want their profit." A tense stillness hovered. The pistolero understood now that this was more than a merciless act. It was the desperate grasp of a woman crushed beneath the crushing weight of a brutal system. "We find another way," he said quietly, eyes locked with the mother's. "One that doesn't drown a daughter in chains." Before the woman could answer, a sudden cough pierced the heavy air. Heads snapped toward the corner of the tent, where a shadowed figure lurked. The pistolero's muscles tensed, hand inching toward his sidearm. Without warning, a sharp report cracked through the tent. The mother's eyes widened as blood blossomed across her chest. She stumbled, clutching at the wound, then collapsed to the dirt floor, lifeblood pooling beneath her. Shock froze the encampment for a breathless moment, before chaos erupted. Voices screamed, hands drew weapons, conspiracies ignited like wildfire. The pistolero stepped back fast, calculating the danger spiraling out of control. On the ground beside her, blood-streaked fingers clutched a scrap of tattered parchment. The pistolero snatched it up quickly, eyes scanning the harsh writing. "If you don't return, there will be consequences for both of you." The warning was unmistakable. A deadly message aimed directly at him and the girl. The young Apache's breath caught, eyes wide with a storm of fear and furious resolve. The betrayal of her mother had been cruel, but this assassination carved a deeper mystery and threat. The pistolero folded the note, his jaw clenched tight as he surveyed the clamoring merchants who now snarled accusations and demanded revenge. The battlefield had shifted. They were no longer negotiating survival. They were cornered prey, marked by vengeance. "Why?" the girl whispered. "Who would?" "Kill her. And why send that to us?" The pistolero's gaze darkened. "Because your mother's debts ran deeper than you imagined, and the hands that pulled her strings are still watching, waiting to reclaim what they lost." The girl's fists clenched, nails biting into palms, but her voice wavered not. "We can't stay here. We have to leave. Now." He nodded, eyes flickering toward the narrow path leading out. Wildlands that promised peril, but also the slimmest chance of freedom. As the merchants scrambled to rally, the pistolero grabbed the girl's arm. "We move fast. Whoever did this will strike again." She swallowed hard, the weight of loss and urgency settling over her shoulders. But her eyes burned brighter than ever. "I'm done being their pawn. Let them come." The pistolero's hand closed around his revolver's grip, muscles coiled like a spring. The land stretched before them, harsh and unyielding, but so was their will. From somewhere beyond the tents came the low rumble of approaching hoofbeats, growing louder, an ominous herald of the dangers racing to catch them. He pulled the girl close, just as shadowed riders drew near, eyes glinting cold and merciless in the fading light. "They're coming for us," he said, voice grim. "And this time we won't run." The desert swallowed the sun, and the pistolero braced for the storm headed their way. A reckoning born from betrayal, blood, and the unrelenting will to survive. The sun dipped behind a jagged ridge, painting the wild expanse in long shadows as the pistolero and the young Apache girl pushed through the scrub and twisted mesquite thickets. Their breaths came ragged, bodies marked by fatigue and the lingering ache of bruises, testaments to the relentless chase that had driven them from merciless hands to the merciless land itself. Every step against the cracked, dry earth echoed like a promise. Keep moving, survive. Between them, a fragile silence wove uneasily, punctuated only by the distant calls of crows and the occasional crackle of dried brush underfoot. The pistolero's thoughts churned behind a stoic mask, but inside, ghosts stirred, memories of solitude broken by a desperation that was no stranger to betrayal. The girl's gaze flickered sharply, haunted by the weight of her mother's treachery, and yet beneath it burned a stubborn spark. Neither had dared name until now. Hope. Night had just begun its slow crawl when they stumbled upon the barren riverbed, its cracked bed yawning wide and empty beneath the stars. The pistolero crouched low, his fingers running over the parched soil, tracing the deep fissures, as if searching for secrets hidden beneath the cracked facade. He looked up at her, the faint flicker of a frown creasing his brow. "No water," she said quietly, brushing dust from her sleeve. "The earth's thirst is deeper than ours tonight." The weight of the world seemed to settle on their shoulders in that moment. The cruel irony relentless. Their fight for life was against both man and wilderness. She sank to a knee, the wind tugging at her tangled hair, eyes closed briefly, as if to conjure strength from some distant well. The pistolero's gaze softened, the unspoken bond between them, growing taut like sinew stretched over bone. "We can't stay here. We need to find shelter, find a way to rest, and we have to be faster now, he said, voice low but firm. Suddenly, her gaze snapped open, sharp and alert. She pointed toward the ridge beyond the dry creek bed. Tracks, heavy, deliberate strides. They're close and closing fast. He shifted instantly, slipping his hand to the worn grip of his revolver, muscles coiling like a panther ready to strike. The pistolero's eyes scanned the ground, feet and shadows, signs unmistakable to a man who had walked too many trails marked by death and desperation. "They're the same ones who bought you," he said, voice a gravelly whisper. "Blood hunters and traitors who see you as nothing more than profit." Her jaw tightened, anger coiling beneath the surface. My mother's betrayal wasn't the end. It just set their trap. The pistolero's heart clenched, not with pity, but resolve. We keep moving. No mistakes. We stay alive, no matter what. The night deepened, the stars watching cold above as their footsteps carried them away from the riverbed and deeper into the unforgiving wilderness. Brief rests found beneath twisted oaks grew short, the strain of hunger and thirst gnawing mercilessly in the silence between them. Movement flickered at the fringe of their vision, a shadow slipping through the brush. The pistolero's breath hitched as he caught a brief outline of a mounted rider, the figure ghost-like against the dark land. The rider approached cautiously, boots muffled against the earth. As he came close, the pistolero recognized the weathered features of an old man, Tana. Sharp-eyed, her gaze betrayed a past carved by hardship and hints of unspoken secrets. She was known in whispers as a survivor, a woman who bore the scars of the frontier's cruelties and navigated its hidden dangers with practiced skill. "Tana," the pistolero greeted, voice tight with relief and caution. "Didn't expect to see you out here." Her eyes lingered for a moment on the girl, then flicked to the pistolero with a mix of recognition and hardened resolve. "Rumors of your cross with the merchants reached me," she said quietly. "They move like shadows, but even shadows have cracks. I come with information and a warning." The young Apache's eyes narrowed cautiously. "What do you know?" Tana's voice dipped to a whisper. "The merchants are part of a larger syndicate, a network of greed and cruelty profiting from the trafficking of our people. They won't hesitate to hunt you down, to snuff out any sparks of defiance." The pistolero clenched his jaw. "Then we're chasing shadows and using what little light we have to expose the rest." Tana nodded once, a fierce glint sharpening her eyes. "I'll join your road, tell you what I know. But be warned, the path you choose will draw blood and tested souls alike." The girl swallowed hard, her gaze flickering between the two. For the first time, a glimmer of solidarity bathed her usually guarded features. The fragile web of trust woven from survival, betrayal, and desperate hope now included a new thread, one strengthened by the truth Tana wielded. A distant howl pierced the silence, a herald of the dangers stalking ever closer. The pistolero hefted his rifle, shoulders squared against the creeping threat. "They've caught our scent," he said grimly, voice steady as the earth beneath his boots. And this time, the noose tightens. The night closed down like a shroud around the three figures. the wilderness, both their refuge and hunting ground. The promise of confrontation hung heavy in the air, a storm on the horizon. The rebel winds carried the faint rattle of spurred boots and whispered threats. The mercenaries were coming. And as the pistolero, the young Apache, and Tanya pressed on into the dark, the thin line that separated prey from predator thinned to a razor's edge. The night air was thick with the acrid smell of smoke and sweat as Tanya's sharp eyes swept the horizon, her words still hanging like a warning between them. "The merchants belong to a corrupt syndicate," she said quietly, her voice edged with steel. "They traffic our people like cattle. The shadows that move behind the curtains are deeper than you know." The pistolero's jaw tightened. The weight of endless betrayals seemed to settle heavier on his shoulders with every revelation. His fingers drummed lightly on the grip of his rifle. "Then we don't just run. We strike at the heart." His gaze flicked to the young Apache girl, who stood silent, eyes narrowed, the fires of determination burning brighter despite the chains of her past. "We make a plan," Tana continued. "Strike quickly but wisely. They've got hunters and pistoleros working their wages, all hungry for profit and power. We won't survive a head-on fight." The pistolero nodded. "We need to move smart. Use the land to our advantage." His voice was taut with urgency, but beneath it beat the unshakable resolve of a man who'd tasted too much bloodshed to back down now. The girl folded her arms, her gaze steely. "I'm tired of running, tired of hiding in the shadows of my mother's betrayal. If we're to fight, I'm with you." For a flicker of time, something between hope and desperation threaded the quiet that gathered like dusk's cloak around them. Tana glanced towards the brush beyond the mesquite trees, her eyes darkening. "They're mobilizing, faster than I feared. We must prepare." Suddenly, a crack in the silence, the unmistakable sound of hooves biting into dry earth, coming fast. "They're upon us." The pistolero's voice was low, urgent. In the dim light pooling beneath the skeletal branches, figures emerged, silhouettes sharpened by the moonlight. Mercenaries and hunters, riding hard and relentless. The sun had long faded, but the day's violence was just beginning. Without hesitation, the pistolero moved to shield the young Apache, placing himself between her and the encroaching danger. His revolver gleamed briefly before thunder erupted. The first shots ripped through the night air, sharp and final. The girl tensed, fists clenched, but there was no fear, only the fierce fire of someone who had no choice but to stand and fight. Amidst the chaos, Tanya disappeared into the shadows, flanking the attackers with practiced precision. The pistolero's bullets barked out in measured bursts, each shot a prayer sent through gunmetal and smoke. A mercenary went down, throat shattered by a cold lead hail. Another raised his rifle, the barrel burning bright in the dark. But Tanya was there, a flash of steel, and he toppled with a curse. The young Apache ducked low, searing pain blossoming suddenly in her shoulder. She gritted her teeth and kept moving, slipping behind a fallen log as the pistolero swept his rifle in arcs, keeping the attackers at bay. "Hold on," he barked, eyes locked on her, the fire of protection blazing behind his tired gaze. But in this desperate dance, numbers told the cruel truth. More riders pressed in, grim faces illuminated by torchlight. Through gritted teeth, the girl saw her chance. Clutching her side, she bolted, weaving through the tangle of brush and rock, almost colliding with Tana, who emerged silently from cover. "Go!" Tana urged, eyes fierce. "I'll slow them down." But the pistolero's voice tore through the night, pulling her back. "No! Stay with us!" She hesitated, torn between flight and fight. Then, with a fierce grimace, she darted forward, vanishing into the black. The pistolero cursed under his breath, realizing her choice to surrender to survival. He doubled down his fire, reloading swiftly, eyes scanning for weaknesses in the encircling menace. Then, the unthinkable, a flash of movement. The girl seized by a rough hand, dark eyes wide with shock and fury. "No!" the pistolero roared, spurring forward with a burst of desperate speed. But the mercenaries proved swift, their grip ironclad, dragging her away. The pistolero skidded to a halt, heart hammering as his grip on the rifle tightened until knuckles blanched. All that flickered in his mind was the burning, bitter sense of loss, not for the battle, but for the girl torn from his reach. He turned to Tana, who was poised, face grim and unwavering. "She's been taken," the pistolero said, voice low and fierce. "And I swear I will bring her back." Tana's eyes glimmered with a fierce promise, the cold truth settling in the quiet night. "Then we move quickly. They won't give her up easy." The pistolero's gaze hardened, fury and resolve blurring into one. The bond forged from pain and survival now demanded blood. As the fading embers of their fire flickered into darkness, a chilling certainty echoed between them. This was no mere chase. It was a war of shadows set to consume them all. In the distance, the faint beat of hooves echoed again, relentless, inevitable. The young Apache girl was lost, and the pistolero's desperate fight to reclaim her was only just beginning. The pistolero's boots crunched softly over the dry, uneven ground as he led the young Apache girl toward the mercantile camp nestled in a sun-baked clearing. Sweat beaded at his brow under the relentless glare of the high noon sun, but his focus remained unyielding. The land around them was cruel, an arid expanse marred by dust and desperation, and so was the task ahead. Her mother, the woman who had sold her like cattle, lived among these traders. Here, the pistolero intended to confront the source of this pain. The girl walked beside him, shoulders tense, eyes flickering between shadow and light. Bitterness clung to her like the dust on her skin, but beneath it stirred something new, an ember of fierce determination. She met his gaze once, a silent question burning in her dark eyes. He nodded, wordlessly offering the only assurance he could. They would face this storm together. They stepped beneath the makeshift tents, the camp's noises a harsh contrast to the quiet wilderness they had escaped. The scent of sweat, cheap whiskey, and smoke pounded around them. Rough men, hardened by greed and cruelty, eyed them with suspicion and hunger. Chains clinked somewhere off to the side, a sound that tightened the girl's jaw and stoked the pistolero's resolve. Ahead, the woman, the girl's mother, stood apart from the merchants. Her face was drawn and hollowed, etched with years of hardship and haunted desperation. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, flicked toward them as they approached. The pistolero moved forward, voice low yet firm. "We need to talk." The mother's gaze hardened, a flicker of defensiveness sparking in her eyes. "You bring her here to bargain?" she spat. "Do you think this is a game? Do you know what debts have crushed us all?" "No," he answered evenly, "but I know what you've done. That selling your own flesh for silver and survival is a debt that costs more than money." A bitter laugh escaped her lips, laced with sorrow and anger. "This land is a cage," she retorted. "Hunger claws at us. Debt is a noose tighter than any chain. I did what I had to, for both our lives." Her daughter's eyes blazed, betrayal sharpened into steel. "You sold me, like I was nothing at all." The mother's lips trembled, pain and regret battling for dominance. It was fear, desperation. "I didn't want this for you, but the traitors, if I said no, they'd take worse." The pistolero's gaze never wavered. "Your choice doomed her to chains you couldn't see, but this ends now." Before the woman could respond, a dry cough interrupted the charged air. Eyes snapped toward a shadowed corner of the camp, where a figure lingered, silent, watchful. The pistolero's hand dropped instinctively to his gun as the tension thickened. Suddenly, a single shot violence. The pistolero backed away, scanning the frenzy, but his attention grabbed by a crumpled, blood-stained note clutched loosely in the woman's shattered hand. He snatched it up, eyes slicing across jagged handwriting. "If you don't return, there will be consequences for both of you." The words hit them like a brutal decree. The girl's breath caught, a storm of shock and simmering fury clouding her features. "She's dead," she whispered, voice trembling. "But who wanted her gone? And why send this to us?" The pistolero folded the note slowly, jaw clenched murky beneath the rising dust of turmoil. "Your mother's debts reach deeper than we dared imagine," he said quietly. "The hands pulling those strings are still out there, watching, waiting." The girl's fists clenched, white, fury and fear jumbled in her eyes. "We can't stay here. They'll come for us next. We have to leave, now." He nodded, scanning the narrow trail leading from the camp back into the wild. "We move fast. Whoever did this won't stop until they get what they want." A tension-laden silence fell between them, the air thick with unspoken grief and urgent resolve. Her gaze sharpened, cutting through the haze of loss with an iron will. "I'm done being their pawn. Let them come." The pistolero's hand closed tightly over his revolver's grip, steady and unyielding as the earth beneath their boots. The sky bled orange and red as the sun slipped behind the distant hills, shadows swallowing the camp. From beyond the tents came a low rumble of approaching hoofbeats, growing louder, deliberate and merciless. "They're coming for us," he said grimly. "And this time," the girl whispered, steadiness bleeding through her voice, "we won't run." The desert swallowed the sun, and the pistolero braced for the storm poised to break. A reckoning born from the trail, blood, and a fierce, burning will to survive. The pistolero staggered beneath a burning sun, wounds aching, but his grip on survival remained unbroken. Around him, the camp had fallen into chaos after the brutal assassination of the young Apache's mother, a desperate act that twisted their struggle into something far darker than either had imagined. The pistolero's eyes scanned the ragged horizon, the blood-stained note from the slain woman heavy in his pocket, its ominous promise, ringing loud. If you don't return, there will be consequences for both of you. No sooner had he gathered his scattered thoughts than the thunder of hooves rolled in like a storm. Shadowed riders cut through the dry brush, mercenaries, hungry and relentless, their faces masks of cruel intent. The pistolero's muscles tensed, every nerve screaming that the final reckoning was fast approaching. "You ready?" he rasped to the young Apache girl at his side. Her dark eyes burned with fierce resolve beneath dirt-streaked lashes, scars of a betrayal she refused to carry any longer. "I'm done running," she whispered. "Let them come." Together, they plunged into the unforgiving land, the pistolero leading the way toward the jagged outcroppings where survival demanded wit as much as firepower. They moved with grim purpose, every footstep a promise to end this nightmare once and for all. Night embraced the wilderness as they found themselves in a narrow canyon, the air thick with dust and tension. The pistolero's breath came hard, the pain in his side blossoming anew with every step. But behind iron-gray eyes shone the unwavering fire of determination, hardened by years of loss and solitude. "Stay close," he urged softly. "We fight tonight, or we die." The girl nodded, fingers curling around the worn grip of her own small hunting knife, refusing to be a victim again. When the first flickers of torchlight appeared, the pistolero's voice dropped to a growl. "This is where they lose." The band of mercenaries emerged, crude and confident, predators convinced of easy victory. But the pistolero had a plan, born of shadows and survival, forged by the bitter lessons of the trail. Tanya, their unexpected ally, had vanished into the darkness moments before, her sharp eyes and lethal precision waiting for the perfect strike. Gunfire cracked the still night like thunder. The pistolero's revolver barked, each shot a deliberate act of defiance. Bullets tore through the quiet as allies and enemies collided in a deadly dance. The young Apache skirted behind rocky cover, surprises flickering across her face as she found an opening to strike, her knife flashing in quick arcs that sang of blood and liberation. Amidst the chaos, a mercenary lunged, grabbing the girl's arm with iron grip. "No!" The pistolero's roar shattered the night. With a burst of raw fury, he charged, fire blazing from his eyes. The struggle was brutal and swift. The pistolero's shot rang true, the attacker collapsing with a ragged gasp. The girl wrenched free, pain blooming in her shoulder, but she stood tall, undaunted. "Tana's holding the flank," the pistolero shouted as he swept his rifle toward fresh threats. "We've got to press." Together, the trio turned the mercenaries' confidence to dust. Tana's guerrilla strikes and the pistolero's steady fire thinned their ranks, while the girl moved with a new mastery born of desperation and hope. The tide shifted with brutal finality. When the last shot faded into the cool night, silence fell heavy and absolute. Breathing ragged and bodies worn, the pistolero collapsed against a boulder, bloodied and weary, but alive. The young Apache approached, steady and fierce, her dark eyes meeting his with a profound understanding born from shared survival. "We ended them," she said softly. "Their cruelty is broken." He nodded, a slow, weary smile touching his lips. "We did, but there's more to live for now." The silence between them was deep, filled with the weight of loss and the fragile stirrings of something new. Trust, redemption, and a promise. In this desolate, cruel land, they had found fragments of family and purpose. The sun's first pale light began to bleed across the horizon as the pistolero lifted himself slowly, cast in the soft glow of dawn. The battles were over, but the true journey of healing and hope was just beginning. "Come," he said, offering a rough hand. The girl took it, and together they stepped forward, no longer hunted, but champions of their own fate. Far beyond the canyon, the land stretched vast and unforgiving, but so did the strength forged in the fires of betrayal, courage, and unforgiving loyalty. In the silence of the waking frontier, two souls once broken found a new path, etched not by bloodlust or fear, but by the unyielding will to survive and the quiet hope for tomorrow. The pistolero was no longer alone, and the young Apache was no longer a prisoner of her past. They rode into the dawn, shadows behind, and a future uncharted before them. Their story had ended, but their legend was only just beginning.